Hey there, and welcome to Under the Roof, the official podcast of Baker Roofing Company. I'm Todd Cavanaugh.
And I'm Matt Elban, and we're here to connect the dots between field and office, leadership and crew, values and action.
In each episode, we dive into the stories, lessons, and updates that matter to our team.
From safety and career growth to company milestones and good old-fashioned storytelling, it's all about living out what makes Baker, Baker. Let's get into it. Your dad, Frank, your uncle, Prentice, were super instrumental in growing this company to kind of what it is today. What lessons would you say you learned from them about what it means to be the steward of something bigger than yourself?
I'll start with Prentice. You guys know Prentice. He's a man of endless energy, and a lot of the energy he has goes into, and has for a long time has gone into Baker Roofing Company. And he is, again, one of the most energetic people I've ever met, one of the most capable people I've ever known. To say that you're going to learn lessons from Prentice is like saying you're going to learn religion from the Pope. There's a lot that goes into that. But when I think about Prentice, what I think about is how this is a people-first business. And he teaches about trust and respect. You have to earn the trust and respect of the people that you employ. You have to earn the trust and respect of the people that you work with, but you have to be seen as someone that everybody around you can trust and respect. He gets there in a number of different ways. He is better than anybody at uncovering a problem and getting into the details and finding it and fixing it. He's great at it, but he always does that with an eye towards the personal connection and from a way of teaching and not from a way of, I gotcha. That's a very valuable lesson for any organization that you want to endure. And he's the most aggressive businessman I've ever seen. And there are some good lessons to be learned there. Dad is a different person. He is very cerebral, ultra competent. Not that Prentice is not, but he is the smartest guy in the room. He is the expert on anything that he chooses to be involved in. From growing up in a house with Frank Baker, there's some tough love there that if you didn't work at this company in the 90s and 2000s, you might be surprised to see. But he always encouraged me to be a good steward of this business, even when I did not have ownership in it. I think he was always interested in me working here. But I think that he was always interested in what back then he would have called the second 100 years. So responsibility and stewardship.
So your family story, obviously pretty incredible, right? Great-grandfather's tin shop, your mom's heart for people of this company, your dad and uncle's growth vision. This chapter being uniquely yours, how do you want the Dylan Baker chapter to read?
That the company did not die on my watch. I purchased something of value along with Mark and John, put our little spin on it, maybe left it in a little bit better shape. Maybe we didn't. It was something of value was passed on to the people that helped create that value. And now they have the upside and the day one value of this company in terms of equity value, which will translate into a retirement benefit at some point in time.
That's great. So Dylan, you're known for keeping things light. I can remember the days of starting meetings with Sporkle. And if you know, you know, for those of you that have been in the Sporkle meetings. But thinking about it, 5 years from now, what do you want people to say about the choice that you guys made in 2025? And really, I know that probably started before 2025. But in 5 years, what do you want your employees to say?
The employees realize the opportunity that they have been given. The timing on this is important. We did this year instead of next year for reasons that we're going to talk a lot about in the next few months. We think that starting this year, we're going to go down a path of quick growth, both top line and profitability. And we thought it was right for the employees to be able to share in that growth, not just years 3, 4, and 5 of it, but from the get-go, because we're going to be asking our employees to lead this charge. And the benefit of the 5-year journey in 2030, they are going to own the full increase in equity value from the plan that we are going to roll out.
For folks who might not know your whole story, I think it's really helpful to get some context. Can you give us like a thumbnail sketch of your journey? And like, how does a kid from Wisconsin end up running a roofing company, then serving in Congress, and then leading the NRCA?
It's a fairly brief story about getting started in my roofing business. My dad was a chaplain for 2 counties in Wisconsin. He was a Baptist minister, and he was the chaplain for Winnebago County and Outagamie County, Wisconsin. But he had 6 kids, and then at some point, my mom and dad decided to adopt 2 more because apparently 6 weren't enough. But they were all boys, and so they adopted 2 girls. And you can't really feed that many people on that type of income. And so he was handy with his hands. He was a World War II veteran in the Marine Corps. So he started selling roofing company in town to make some extra money. And then that ultimately led to him starting his own very small residential roofing company. And when I graduated from high school, I think he had maybe 3 or 4 employees, and that was it. But it was more of a hobby for him, and I was the youngest, and so he didn't really need the money anymore from the roofing company. He asked if I would be interested in just taking it over, and there wasn't a lot to it. You know, they were doing maybe 2 roofing jobs a week, and that was just during the summer, because in Wisconsin, you would get snowed in the winter pretty quick. And so I thought, give it a shot. I don't know anything about it if you'll kind of teach me how to do it. And during my own research, I discovered NRCA because I felt if I'm going to make a career of this and make a living for my own family, I better learn what I'm doing. And so I reached out to the National Roofing Contractors Association, immediately became a member. This dates back to 1975. And it was integral. My relationship with NRCA is really the driving point of virtually every success step I've had throughout my career. That's how it all happened. And that's how I got into commercial roofing.
But you said something at the 2017 Best of Success Conference. You said there's not a single mom or dad on the planet who, when their son or daughter is born, looks down on that bassinet and says, wow, I hope you become a roofer when you grow up. And that's really a brutally honest statement. It's probably really factual too. How do we change that? Because your point about us being proud of what we do, respecting what we do, that has to change, right? I mean, growth and success, that has to change. So how do we do that?
It's a difficult question because it's a sociological issue that the country is facing. And by the way, this is not a new sociological issue. All throughout U.S. history, as immigrants would come to the U.S., they would find trades to do. In the early years of our history, up to the early 1900s, so for the first 125 years or so, the bulk of those trades were in agriculture and construction. And there were some clothes makers, people that made suits and clothing and things like that. We pretty much made everything we needed here. But it was always the first generation immigrants that would come in and do that work because people would find that working on the farm, working in the factory was difficult, hard, menial labor, and they were anxious to get into more automated forms of enterprise. And so as America industrialized and we began to make things with machines, people gravitated to those jobs. And then as more and more automation occurred, people moved into areas of professional services like banking, finance, insurance, and other things that supported those jobs. And so, but the people that filled those jobs, they were vacated by native-born citizens, were often first-generation immigrants. That's still the case today. And so as a result of that, and we know kind of the vibe in the country right now about immigrant workers, people look down on these folks for whatever reason, but they only look down on them until they need landscaping done, or they look down on them until they need a roofing job done. And invariably, and you've probably heard this from your own customers, whether they're a commercial job or a residential job, they talk about how hard your crews work. They'll tell you things like, man, I can't believe how hard those guys work.
Short, small man, always dressed impeccably. That sounds kind of strange being in the roofing business, but at the stage when I knew him, he was older and probably didn't get on many roofs, quite frankly, at that point. He had worked with his hands, particularly in the sheet metal shop for a big part of his career. Soft-spoken, You want to add anything else to?
Well, I think the part that he was impeccably dressed is quite important because he came from a very, very poor background. He left Cardiff County when he was 13 years old, I believe.
12, 13, yeah.
Put everything he owned on a mule and came to Raleigh. So he was alone.
No education.
Absolutely not. Never did.
Tenant farmer, that was his dad had. And the kids, when they got to a certain age, 12 or 13, they would send them off to the big city, Raleigh, to work and be able to send money back home for the other 8 or 10 siblings in the family to live. Obviously didn't make much money being a tenant farmer.
But as he aged and became engaged with Baker Roofing Company, or Rawls Tin Shop as it began, I think he always wanted to show that he was a businessman and a gentleman, no matter what his background had been. And the way that he showed that to the public was the way that he dressed. So it was very important for him to be viewed by his peers as a gentleman.
Yeah, when I picture your grandfather, I think of that one photo. There's a woman at the desk with the typewriter and him standing behind, impeccably dressed in a suit. And I heard actually specifically, like, you're known for your dress. And I've heard, like, that's where you got your inspiration. You too, Ms. Baker, but I've heard, like, the suits, and that is part of where you got that inspiration in your life. Is that true?
I think that's essentially accurate. Yes. He passed along I know he did to my dad. Because my dad, he was not as good a businessman, to be honest, as our grandfather was, but he was a great gentleman. And that was one of the many things that he taught us, was how to treat people, how to act. So that was very important to him and to his grandfather.
Now, with that granddad dressing impeccably, he was a very humble man, was very evident and had a big impact on us.
Speaking of old work, I'm curious. I know some of the lore of Baker is around moonshine stills. I'm not sure I think the statute of limitations has run out at this point, so we can talk about it. I would love to hear a little history about moonshine stills and Baker Roofing Company.
Well, we did specialty copper work. After I had worked at the company, I guess finally I was full-time at the company. So it had been 1969, 1970. We were working on Saturday. We always worked on Saturday, worked every day except Sunday. And I'm at the back counter doing some little anybody could have done, but I'm sitting there and this guy walks in the back door. And he's smoking a cigar, and he's got on a hat and a tie, and, I thought, well, this is a little odd for a Saturday in the summer, but he comes in and he's got a drawing with him, and he says, I need you to make this for me, and I need it on Monday morning, and I'll pay cash, whatever it is you feel like you need to charge me to do this work. It was this sort of round thing made out of copper, and it had some pipes coming out of it, and I didn't have any idea what it was. So I took it out to Jake. Jake looked at it and started laughing, and he said, you don't know what this is, do you? And I said, no, I don't. He said, well, this is a moonshine still. And that guy's a moonshiner, and he's going to come back in here Monday morning, and he's going to have a stack of bills with him to chuck a horse. And whatever we want to charge him, he'll pay us just to get up and going. And that's exactly what happened. He made that thing that day, came in Sunday, finished it up. Guy comes back in Monday, still wearing the tie, the hat, has the cigar, walks in, says, what do you need me to pay you? And I can't remember what I told him, but it was something outlandish, of course. And he just starts rolling bills, puts it on the counter, says, can I take it away now? I said, yes, sir. Down he goes.
I always wanted to know if that was Percy Flowers or Percy's brother. And he was a famous bootlegger from Johnston County. There's a book just came out. If you hadn't read it, it's not a great book, but it's kind of a life story of Percy and his brother and the family. Flowers development down there on 42. The daughter is Take those 3,000 acres that they all turned into.
Full advice, 3,000 acres.
Yeah, that's questionable. Yeah.
Our personal adventures, which seemingly tie into our professional careers, they kind of go hand in hand. Your personal life impacts your professional career and vice versa. So when we moved to Savannah, Georgia to go on this adventure, I'll say it for the third time, we kind of hit the ground running. Family, we were finding a place to stay, adventuring, finding new areas that we enjoyed. And Savannah's a beautiful place. There's a lot there, very historic. So we were exploring and doing all that as I'm helping start our Savannah location and kind of just going 110%, 110 miles an hour ahead. It almost seems like a flash in time, right? My wife was pregnant with our third child at the time when we arrived in Savannah, Georgia. I had my two children, my son and my middle daughter at the time. We're both young, and my wife was pregnant with our third child. And during the pregnancy, she was doing fantastic. It was the best pregnancy she had gone through up to that point. Her words, not mine. Everything seemed to just be tracking. We're building our family here in this new location. Work was exciting. Yeah, it was challenging, yes, but we're building a brand and we were hiring on team members, new field crew members. And it was just, you could just feel the growth, right? As my personal family got established in this community, we found a church, we're making friends and building the company as well. It was an exciting time. And it just happened so fast. So as our third child was born, after the birth, my wife was going through some health complications. Nothing too crazy, but enough that it made you kind of go, what's going on here? And we went and saw some doctors and they would tell you, well, hey, look, it's your third child in a relatively short amount of time. Maybe just it's going to take a couple more months before she feels 100%. So we kind of chucked it up to that. Hey, it's going to be okay. Let's just keep our heads forward. And I tried to help out as much as I could at home and support her so she could rest as much as possible. We had friends and family come and help as well with the kids. So we had plenty of support and we just kind of said, okay, we're going to get through this season of life, right? The issues just seemed to get worse. The conditions worsened. She had pain in her back and just some other symptoms that just seemed to, it's getting worse, not going away. And I finally just kind of got fed up with it. I'm sure you know how it feels as a husband. You want to fix things, you know how we are. And I didn't know what to do. We booked an appointment with a specialist to just get like another opinion. They saw some things after they ran scans and some blood work that were concerning. And they said, look, we need to get you to a specialist right away at the hospital. We're kind of in the dark. Me and my wife are looking at each other like, what in the world is going on here? And so get sent to the hospital and they run some more tests. They run some biopsies and things like that and some extra blood work and CAT scans and all kinds of things. And it was a little bit later in the day, we were notified that they did find some concerning things in their scans. And they didn't really give us a word. But at this point in my own head, I started to kind of piece the things together just based off of the vocabulary that the doctors were using. They used the word metastasized and lymph nodes and some things that I kept it in my own head. I didn't want to scare my wife or anything, but I'm starting to piece it together. I kind of had a feeling of what they were going to tell us eventually. We were just sitting there praying and I'm trying to comfort my wife and we're just trying to take it all in at the time and trying to figure out what does this even mean? At that point, we were sent home to give them time to get the biopsies back to confirm what they were finding. And a few days later, we were called in to the hospital again, where we were eventually transported to a specialist who did confirm it was a cancer. It was actually Thanksgiving Day, which is pretty crazy. Just seems like the worst way that you could find out, right? It was a bizarre experience and obviously very heavy. And it was kind of at that moment where I realized, okay, we're at sort of a fork in the road. And I don't even realize how serious this is as far as the impacts on our life, my professional career, all of those things. So as you can imagine, the next few days were a storm of events and emotions and feelings. And I just remember calling Matt Johnson and actually, informing him of this and letting him know I'm going to have to do something dramatic for my family. She was diagnosed with cholangiocarcinoma, and 2 out of the 5 top doctors specifically for that happened to be in Chapel Hill and Durham at UNC and Duke. And so I told Matt Johnson, I said, I got to move my wife there. That's what I got to do. Of course, I said, look, I want to support this young branch as much as I can. I'll travel, do what I need to do to help in any way. But this is what I have to do for my family. And without hesitation, Matt said, we're going to make this work. That was a beautiful moment for me, and one of many moments where I knew I was at a place and with a company that doesn't just have the motto and the pretty lettering and all of these things, but they really stand behind what they say. And if you're a valued member of the team and you've put in your effort, this is a place that's going to give that back to you. And so Matt Johnson, it couldn't have been 2 days, I had a position in Raleigh with Baker Roofing, and that was sorted out. I didn't have to go through any loops and holes to do that. It was just a wild time, and it was a crazy transition. Obviously, like I said, building a community in a new location, not just Baker Roofing, but my own personal life, and then having to uproot and go a completely different direction out of nowhere was scary at the very least. I would say that was scarier than moving to Savannah, was leaving, not knowing, what does this mean for my career? What does this mean for my family? I'll stop it there so you can kind of help direct with questions, but that was my personal experience through Savannah.
If you could go back and tell yourself something 5 years ago, any advice you'd give that younger version of you, what would that piece of advice be?
That's a powerful question. And I think 100 things I would like to go back and tell myself. But if I have to funnel it down to one that comes to mind, it's just the value of being present. If I could go back and tell myself one piece of advice or one statement, it would just be more present. And that's personally and professionally. Don't let time just roll by. Don't let seasons just pass by, even the ones that you don't really want to be in, because we all go through seasons and stages of life, whether it's a project you've put on, whether it's a certain job you've been tasked with, whether it's something in your personal life. We all go through a season where every day you're just like, let this be over with. Let me get through this. I don't think that's a detrimental thought, but I do think the value of being present can teach us so much. Don't be, I think I mentioned earlier, but being too far behind or too forward thinking and too in the future can also hurt you. There's a lot of things going on right now in the moment that you can seize and you can capitalize on. And so if I could give myself one piece of advice, it would be a little more present.
I think that's a piece of advice that I can certainly take, and I'll pretend I'm 5 years younger and you just gave it to me, so thank you. But I think that everyone here at Baker Roofing Company, whether that's the folks that are leading the company, all the way down to the people that are in the field doing the work, I personally think that we can all be a little bit more present. Yeah, we do need to think forward. Yes, we do need to consider what happened behind us and be in the past. But there's a lot going on right here, right now. And if we're not in the moment with our people, in the moment with your families in a personal sense, we're going to miss a lot.
That wraps up this episode of Under the Roof. Thanks for joining us and being part of the Baker Roofing family.
If you liked what you heard, share it with your crew. Hit the follow button and keep the conversation going wherever you work.
We're here to keep you informed, inspired, and included, because the more connected we are, the better we work together.
And as always, we'll leave you with this. We shall do good work, at a profit if we can, at a loss if we must, but always good work. See you next time.